I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring your ass.
These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
And welcome to Target Center here. It's Phil Mackey. It's the sports dad, Judd Zulgad, live on the Score North YouTube channel, live at Flagrant Howls, post-game, Game 1 recap of a 108-105 Timberwolves loss here. So a little bit of an opposite situation from that Denver series, Judd, where the Wolves ambushed the Nuggets, jumped out to a 2-0 series lead, and then had to claw back into it after Denver won the first three. We'll see how the flow of this series goes, but how are you feeling? What's your main takeaway here after the Wolves fall 108-105 to the Mavericks?
My main takeaway is it's definitely a blown opportunity, but by the Wolves, because they led this game for a large portion. But I think it's important to point out that this was it was not necessarily a well-played game. I thought it was a fun game to watch. It was sort of what I wanted from the Denver series, which was close games. But, you know, if you look at game one of this series compared to any game in the Nuggets series, it was very clear that Nuggets and Wolves, Phil, were very familiar with each other. There were no huge surprises. There were adjustments, but this felt like the classic game one feeling out game. Like you could tell the Wolves and Mavericks both hadn't played in a while and didn't know exactly what to expect. So a very different type of feeling, but no question about it, a blown opportunity.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it felt like two boxers sort of feeling each other out. It was like you said, this post-trade deadline version of the Mavericks, better defensively, more size. The rookie, Derek Lively, by the way, just an absolute presence in the paint. The putbacks, and we can talk about some of the things that stood out here just in terms of the strategy and the X's and O's, but it did kind of feel like, to your point, the Nuggets and the Wolves knew exactly who the other opponent was. And we literally have people screaming at Draymond Green from across the
arena. Is that what it is?
Yes.
She's very upset.
So we are just, we'll get into the game here in a second, but we're sitting here just kind of on the top of the lower level of seats across the court from the inside of the NBA TNT crew. We had some derogatory Draymond chants before the game here. Shaq was roaming around courtside before the game, so we'll give you more of the vibe here behind the scenes. But, yeah, it felt like two boxers kind of feeling each other out. I think the biggest story at the end of the day, when this thing went back and forth in the fourth quarter, it was the first real nail-biter game that we've had, I feel like, in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, the two heavyweight fighters for the Mavericks, Luka and Kyrie, delivered more big punches than the two offensive heavyweights for the Wolves, Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns, who were largely atrocious offensively in this game. Ant looked exhausted by the end of the game, chasing Kyrie around for the better part of 2.5 hours. But, yeah, I mean, Luka and Kyrie definitely had a bigger and better night than Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns, and there's a million other things to break down in this game, but to me, that's the headline, Judd.
Yeah, and between Luka and Kyrie, you're talking about a combined 63 points. Kyrie absolutely held the Mavs in this game in the first half. He was brilliant. 24 points. 30 for the game, so only 6 second half points for him. But Luka, who had 14 points in the first half, finished with 33. So like each superstar took a half. Here's something else I would say, because I think that there's going to be the freaking out period here about, oh my God, now it's going to be Mavericks in 4.
Are we going to do that? Are we really going to do that after
I'm
what
already
happened in the
starting to
Nuggets
see
series?
Comments, but here's what I love about this, and I don't know if this was true. I mean, Denver's got talent, defending champions, so this is not putting them down. But didn't you get the feeling tonight that you were watching two, in some ways, very similar teams as far as the work ethic goes, as far as the defense goes? Like this is going to be a dogfight. And I really felt like tonight set the tone. I think the familiarity of the series is going to take off now. Adjustments definitely will be made starting in game 2. But just from a standpoint of game 1, didn't you feel like this was the Spider-Man meme?
Yeah, I mean, it was
in some ways, defensively especially.
It was very much size versus size, but I think What's crazy is throughout the regular season, and especially in the Phoenix and Denver series, it felt like Minnesota's size made the opponent uncomfortable more than the other way around.
Yep.
This was the first game in a long time, for sure the first game in the playoffs where I thought, oh, the opposing team's size made the Timberwolves uncomfortable. And I'm trying to, I guess we close these laptops here, but
I've got one. I saw
so what's the points in the paint? It was like 64 to 36 or something?
62 to 38, which was off for Dallas, which was offset by the Wolves because they were 18 of 49, 37% from 3-point range, and Dallas was 6 of 25.
But it kind of felt like with Lively, in particular, coming off the bench for however many minutes he wound up getting in, and then Gafford, too. I mean, Lively had a bigger impact than Gafford, but both those guys are like 7 feet tall. The Mavericks, I think, pretty obviously wanted Anthony Edwards to shoot his way to 28 or 30 points, and if that was going to be the final box score, then they were going to live with it. But they made it really hard for the Wolves to get in and go through the layup drill and even getting to the free throw line. I mean, the Wolves shot some free throws tonight, but yeah, I guess it felt like the Mavericks' size made the Wolves more uncomfortable than the other way around. And part of that, dude, is because Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic make it look so easy in and among the trees. I mean, Luka's ability throughout the fourth quarter to just get just a little shoulder into a Jaden or a Naz or an Anthony Edwards, just a little separation for that fadeaway. In the first half, not much was working for the Mavs offensively, except Kyrie Irving was just getting anything he wanted, and he was weaving in that quick little release at the rim.
Right.
It was a huge dose of Kyrie in the first half and a huge dose of Luka Doncic. And part of the problem for the Wolves is you might say, well, those guys are hitting ridiculous shots and they combine for 63 points. I mean, isn't that kind of what they do all the time? I don't know that I look at this and say, boy, like the Mavericks were unsustainable offensively because Kyrie and Luka hit a bunch of tough shots. Like, well, that's just kind of who they are. That's why they're two of the greatest offensive players in the league. And it's going to be on Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns in particular to match that. In a game in which Jaden McDaniels, by the way, knocks down 6 3-pointers, it feels like a waste of one of the great games he has played in his career to this point.
Yeah. The thing that would concern me about Kyrie and Doncic is this. They each took a half. So what happens if they both play complete games? So I would not dismiss that. In the first half especially, too, though. So Luka gets in the paint, and yes, first of all, he tries to draw fouls constantly. But second of all, he does that subtle, where he does throw a shoulder in or an arm in. But what really impressed me in the first half was Kyrie literally gets to the basket.
Yeah.
Like, how many times did he just get to – he created, and I don't know how, clear paths to the basket where they didn't exist. Like, that to me that's a special gift because, to your point, you're going through the trees there, and it wasn't that he got into the paint and then found a way to score. He got into the paint, got to the basket, and was making this ridiculous circus layups, and it was impressive.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's him,
Yeah, you shrug your shoulders, and that's just kind of – it wasn't like either one of them went off for 45 points, which could absolutely happen at some point in this series.
Right.
The amount of – by the way, like the amount of putbacks and, the Mavericks wind up with 11 offensive rebounds, and I feel like almost every one of them was like an emphatic putback dunk by a Lively or somebody just coming in hot. Here's another just quick take. It's funny because the Timberwolves are percentage-wise one of the best three-point shooting teams in the entire league throughout the regular season and the playoffs. And I'm just going to pull this up here because I have a take on this. So the Wolves in the regular season finished, I think, top 3. Yeah, they finished third in three-point make percentage, just behind the Thunder and the Celtics. So they knocked down 39% of their three-pointers. But they ranked 23rd in attempts. So the Wolves only took like 32 threes per game. You got the box score there. What did they take tonight? Was it 50? Did they take 50 threes tonight?
49.
49?
49.
49.
Yeah.
So I think on one hand you could say, well, the Wolves are one of the best percentage three-point shooting teams in the league. They should be taking threes, right? But I think there comes a point of diminishing returns, and the Mavericks clearly decided they were okay living and dying with the Wolves taking 40 to 45 to 49 3-point attempts. I think you get to a point where if you're tacking on another 17 attempts from your season average, those aren't all clean looks. Or you've got streaky guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker who hasn't knocked down a three in like a week, I feel like. And he'll get hot again at some point in the series. So, like it's funny that the Mavericks looked at the Timberwolves and said, we know you hit threes at a high clip, but we don't think if we just let you sit out there and shoot yourselves tired, and we'll contest as many as we can. They dared the Wolves to beat them with jump shots, and the Wolves weren't able to. It was interesting.
And that goes back to a conversation that I think we had a couple times during the Denver series, right? About, the fact that the Rockets in their prime, like that was the thing. They're going to make a bunch of threes, but if you just let them take the threes, especially against a good team, eventually, if that dries up, they're absolutely screwed. Dallas without beyond a shadow of a doubt, what we saw tonight from Dallas for, I think, the first time in the playoffs, and the Wolves, yes, they got their drawers blown off, but I don't think we have seen a performance that was as workmanlike and as Wolves-like in the effort as we saw from the Mavs.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, the Spider-Man meme. You're kind of right about that. It was almost like having two Anthony Edwards who can kind of just get their own shots whenever they want in Luka and Kyrie, and then they just they make you go through the trees in the paint. Hey, real quick, we're getting a bunch of questions on some of the officiating tonight. So Blast On wants to know about the basket interference. I'll throw also the basket interference on Cat, and then I'll throw the Mike Conley offensive foul. What was the phrasing from Mark Davis? It was the subtle but effective push.
Push, yeah.
I thought both those were bogus, and
well,
I don't know. I guess by the letter of the law, maybe the Karl-Anthony Towns putback
was rule on that exactly? Because
above the cylinder.
But that ball was out. If you go back and watch it, it looks to me like the ball has come out of the cylinder, but
it's above the cylinder.
So
the cylinder goes up in perpetuity to the top of the arena.
Right, but what about when it's out of that sphere? Because that's what it looked like to me.
Yeah, once it moves like outside. So imagine that the sphere goes all the way.
It goes up,
right?
It goes up.
The camera angle from the top. I guess my point is usually when the ball is that high off the rim and someone comes in, and it was kind of like it was at least halfway off. Letter of the law, I guess it might have been the right call.
I've seen way worse than that, man.
Yeah, there was a couple calls like that, and I don't want to make this about officiating, but I'd rather make it about the end of the first half sequence where the Wolves, it was like a 5-point swing unnecessarily because the Wolves got sloppy. But but it's like whether the ball was in or out, I just don't know that that's a call that you see made a lot, and that was kind of jarring to me. And then the Conley, come on, guys. What are we calling in that situation? Of all the things you could have called in a physical playoff game, and we're calling that in a key moment. It's funny that Mark Davis, right? That's the head official. He's the one that, in Game 2 and then in Game 6, the two biggest blowout wins for the Wolves in that Nuggets series, he just let everyone play for 2.5 hours.
But what was weird about it was they also tonight let them play a lot, which I liked. That's the thing is there were a few calls both ways that were incredibly ticky-tack, but for the most part, there were some good old-fashioned muggings that they didn't call, and I'd prefer that. Just allow the game to play out, especially this one. I mean, this series is going to be a lot of times ugly. There's going to be a lot of ugly basketball, not aesthetically pleasing. But yeah, I was really surprised because every once in a while you'd get a whistle and it would be like, hold on, you're going to call that, but you didn't call 3 before. And I thought, and again, from the replay that I saw, I thought that ball had come out of what is considered the cylinder. So
I did too.
I didn't like that call. And I also, again, I've just seen worse. If that is offensive basket interference, then I got bad news for you. We're going to start disallowing a lot of baskets.
We should almost, I don't know, and I'm just making up rules because I'm pissed about the outcome of the game maybe, but if a ball clangs off the rim and goes straight up in the air, if it's above the level of the backboard at any point, the offensive goaltending should go out the window. That I don't know. now I'm just making up rules because I'm spiteful that the Wolves are down.
But again, the Wolves
nothing.
did, and I told you when the Wolves led at halftime, this felt like because there were times in the first half where I swore I was going to look up at the jumbo board here, and the Wolves were going to be up by like 12 points, 15 points, right? But it never happened. It always stayed close. And I told you at halftime, this feels like the type of game where the visiting team hangs around, and then at the end, they've suddenly won by like 4 points. Yeah. That's how this game felt.
And that's what they can do. I know that, we kind of go back to the regular season from last year, and one of the most fun moments of that season was Wolves up by 3, I think in Dallas. And so Dallas has like 17 seconds left to knock down a game-tying 3. They're inbounding from half court. Mm-hmm. And Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards put the handcuffs on Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and they couldn't even get a shot off before the buzzer sounded and the game was over. It was one of the great defensive sequences of the year, and it really put Jaden McDaniels on this different platform, just clamping two of the best get-your-own-shot offensive creators in the league. And I'm kind of guilty of this. I think you watch that, and then you watch the way that, by the way, Jaden McDaniels' second-team All-NBA defensive team, Anthony Edwards' second-team All-NBA period. And you thought, well, the Mavericks are a nice matchup because you can just throw Jaden McDaniels on Luka, and you can throw Anthony Edwards on Kyrie Irving, and you can roll the ball out, and you're not going to shut those guys down entirely, but like good luck getting out of the handcuffs that are Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards. Well, you look up, and Luka Doncic winds up with a classic Luka Doncic performance, and Kyrie Irving was getting pretty much anything he wanted, whether Anthony Edwards guarded him or anyone else, in the first half anyways.
Yep.
And Anthony Edwards, by the end of the game, was like he was walking up the court on some of those key possessions, grabbing at his shorts because he was exhausted trying to shut down Kyrie Irving. Mm-hmm. So, that's the consequence when you put Anthony Edwards on Kyrie Irving. Yeah, his life is going to be harder than if you put Conley on him, but he's going to be freaking tired, and he's not going to have as much in terms of legs for jump shots. He's not going to be able to get to the rim as often. So I will say this, was that an annoying loss? 100%. Were there things that could have been different and the Wolves could have won that game easily? Of course, but I watched the outcome of that game and how many things just weren't there for the Wolves that usually have been there against Phoenix and Denver, and I still feel like it's a Wolves in 5 or a Wolves in 6 series. I don't watch that game and think, oh my God.
Oh, it's very
the Mavericks are this insurmountable mountain. It was a good game, two teams punching back and forth, and a couple superstars got the best of a couple other superstars.
Yeah, I feel like the key is this. You're going to need – so I firmly expect that Kyrie and Luka are both going to get theirs. I don't think you're going to just stop them both. I think they're just too good. Now, the Mavericks also have a really nice supporting cast. I don't think, P.J. Washington makes some shots, but I don't think that the Mavericks have a supporting cast that's going to beat you. I think that they can help beat you, certainly. And the one thing that I would say is I think there's no question, starting in Game 2, you are going to need probably more scoring from Ant and Cat. Tonight was sort of weird because Jaden was out of his mind, which, look, Jaden should make shots. Yeah. He's really good. Should he have to make as many shots as he did tonight? That's debatable. Kyle Anderson, I don't know where that came from, and I hope he enjoyed it because, that is almost certainly, and there's a role for him physically here, I think. But, as far as the points go, Naz was really good tonight. I thought Naz played a great game. But just as far as, the matchup of Kyrie and Luka, I think you're going to need Ant and Cat to, as Brad Childers used to say, impose their will on this series a little bit more.
Well, on the Jaden front, he winds up hitting the 6 3-pointers. He goes 9 for 15. He had a brutal turnover in the final minute and a half where he just he got himself in no man's land driving to the hoop, and then he jumps in the air and panics as he's falling out of bounds and tries to thread the needle to Rudy, who's not going to catch that pass. That was brutal, but he was 24 points on 15 shots, knocks down the 6 threes, and he's guarding Luka for the majority of the time that he was out there. on the negative side for the Wolves, that's a terrible game to waste, man. Like, if you were to say, hey, Jaden's going to give you like 2 or 3 really high-end offensive performances in this series. One of them is going to be a night where he hits 6 3-pointers, most of them in the first half to get you going, right? And you're going to lose the game. That feels like one that you have to put in the win column when he goes off like that. But then on the flip side, how many times are Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards going to combine to go 12 for 36?
Right.
And miss a bunch of rattling out all these 3-pointers. So, it was 2 boxers feeling each other out. I'm sure the Wolves are going to have a bunch of adjustments that they can implement in Game 2. And we'll see what happens in a couple nights.
I also think it's obvious that the Wolves, in fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken here, Dallas had more turnovers on the night than the Wolves did by a couple. But the Wolves seem to have some really untimely ones, and I want to say it was Ant in particular. It might have been in the first half alone, had 3. That sequence at the end of the second quarter was really, in my opinion, damaging. I think Ant turned the ball over twice in a short period of time, led to a Kyrie basket, and that's the type of thing where that ball is precious. That's the thing is we're to a series, and this is awesome, but I think we're in a series now where every game could be really close. Like, the blowouts are done. But the Wolves also are going to have to find a way to deal with, I think, being dealt a dose of their own medicine, which is your opponent is going to work its ass off, especially those supporting cast guys on the Mavs, and they're going to try to wear you down like you wore Denver down.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting series because it's going to be, I think, more fun than Denver, but I also think it's a very different tone, and there's going to have to be an adjustment to what are we up against here, because it's not going to be what the Nuggets threw at you at all. It's going to be a very different tone to it.
A couple other things to note here. The Wolves 11 of 18 at the free throw line, including Mike Conley missed the last one on purpose, but he was 1 for 3 before that. He was 1 for 4 on the night, 1 for 3 from the free throw line when he was trying to make them. Now, Rudy gives you a 4 for 6. He missed the 2, but I think 4 of 6 for Rudy is fine. And then Naz Reid winds up going 2 for 4. They didn't shoot a ton of free throws tonight, but when Conley misses a couple free throws like that, I mean, you're talking about little margins here in a 3-point loss to Dallas. I would say just a couple missed free throws that are uncharacteristic compared to your overall percentage. And the end of the first half sequence where it winds up being like a 4 or a 5-point swing, and you probably I'm blanking on the math exactly, but I think I guess the Wolves had a 6. It would have been like a 6-point lead or a 7-point lead. Instead, it winds up being a 3-point game going into the half. So things like that. Hey, before we keep breaking this thing down, and we can talk about the vibe here too with the TNT crew in the house. You and I were courtside roaming around for the first couple hours. Let's shout out our friends over at Legendary Golf Apparel, my friend. In fact, Judd, let me show you what these are amazing threads here by a Minnesota-based and veteran-owned, family-operated company, Legendary Golf Apparel. You want to talk about butter on your body? I have a couple of these shirts.
Nice.
Can't wait for the long sleeve, the hooded sweatshirt season to come back in the fall too. LGNDY.co. That's LGNDY.co. And you can use the code HOWL, HOWL, at checkout for 20% off your order. And by the way, this company, Legendary Golf Apparel, donates a portion of all proceeds to veteran organizations. The founders, Brock and Brooks, are passionate about the sport of golf, helping veterans as well, and growing the game that they love through quality and affordable performance golf gear. This is some of the most comfortable stuff that I have ever put on, and you can check them out. Legendary Golf Apparel, LGNDY.co, and the promo code is HOWL for 20% off your order at checkout. Just the vibe in here tonight. Did you feel at all like, I thought early on the fans were amazing. Yep. I thought, we're halfway through the playoffs. It felt like there might have been some burnout after that Nuggets series. I think there was a pins and needles vibe late in the game here inside Target Center, but by and large, the vibes were off the charts in the early part of that game tonight, I thought anyways.
That was fantastic, yeah. It's funny, when I got here for Game 6, the lines that had, for Games 3 and 4, the lines that had started in the sky where I come through were gone, like people were sort of roaming in late. Tonight it was back to anticipation. This crowd was great, and I felt like this game 1 was louder than games 3 and 4 were. Game 6 was really loud, but it was a great vibe. And aside from the fact that I guess the roof sprung a leak, it was
let's talk about that. It was
fantastic.
So
but
what happened?
So there's video out there, and our guy Patrick Royce tweeted about it because I think he got hit by some of the condensation that was coming down from the roof. Now, the only thing, and this is just pure reckless speculation on my part, the only thing I can think of is that the roof here now is a greenery. So it's like a not a garden, but it's just grass up there now.
It's grass.
So it's not like an old school roof. And I wonder if that's somehow from all the rain that we got in the past couple days holds the water, because the tweets I saw, the video was literally like raindrops, not geysering down, but just coming down slowly. And it was weird. I saw some tweets about this, and I can't dismiss it completely. It did look like guys slipped on the court more than I'm used to seeing in an NBA game. Now, that could be from sweat as well, but I saw a few guys slip. So I don't know what the explanation is, and I don't know, but you definitely do not want your roof springing a leak with a basketball floor below it. That's a bad idea.
It is. Yeah, it's an old arena, so your conspiracy theory might be correct here. As the audience grows and the spotlight is brighter, we might as well poke a hole so we get a new arena.
Hey, you know what? The greatest day in Vikings history is the day the Metrodome roof collapsed, because if that roof does not come down, I don't know that U.S. Bank Stadium is there, but once it came down, they're like, we got to move a game to Detroit. What are we going to do here?
But that roof collapsing also cost the public $500 million in taxpayer money to help build that U.S. Bank Stadium. So this is the first sign. Well, I know the Wilfs are okay with it. I'm sure A-Rod, Laurie, and whoever owns the team would be okay with that too. But, we're due for a new arena at some point. It's kind of embarrassing when people are getting – it did feel like what do you call them? The ball people who run out there with the little towels and stuff. Like, they were working overtime, I feel like, on every possession to keep the court dry. I don't know.
I would not want to have paid, let's say, 500 smackers to be here and been rained on.
Yeah. No, or whatever these – some of the secondary market prices for those courtside seats, man, were like $10,000. I don't know if people – that's what they were listed at. I don't know if anyone's pulling the trigger on a $12,000. By the way, like, if you're buying a courtside seat on the secondary market for like $12,000, isn't there like a more – because don't you have to rely on whoever it is to like send you the emailed version of the tickets?
This is beyond my. This is beyond my.
If I'm in the second deck, like, I'm okay using StubHub, but I don't know, man.
All I know is tonight's game was so big that Vikings star receiver Justin Jefferson, who's always courtside when he comes, was on the baseline, and he wasn't even in the first row. He was in the second row, baseline.
Boy.
So
it's tough to afford the front row ticket when you don't have a new contract yet.
You're getting lowballed. Poor guy.
Guy can't get a $35 million a year average annual value contract. Sit courtside at a Western.
What's he supposed to do?
Poor guy. I feel bad for him. Yeah, Jordan Addison was here. Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, Jimmy Goldstein was here again. Big time playoff game.
T. Hud was here.
Troy Hudson was in the house tonight.
Didn't look at the camera, which was sort of weird. They showed him on the scoreboard, and he either didn't realize it or ignored it completely.
He was deep in a conversation with somebody next to him,
Very
and
adult.
then Montel Jordan performed one song at halftime.
By the way, full disclosure, I never knew who sang that song until tonight.
This is how we do it?
I've heard that song thousands of times.
What do you think they paid him to show up for 6 minutes to perform one song at halftime?
That's a great question.
I think when Bret Michaels and Poison go to a casino, they get like $30,000 or $40,000, maybe like $50,000.
And he did redo the words to include Nas Reed and some Timberwolves lyrics. So perhaps
a game one win.
Yeah,
Yeah, very. So he put some work into it. He
That's
wasn't
what
lip
I'm
syncing. He put some work
That's
into
what I'm saying. So my guess is he got a very nice payday for this.
it. People are guessing. Aryan says 10K. We're guessing 10K in the budget for Montel Jordan.
10K
you got to pick up his travel, his hotel.
And courtside seats, right?
Was he sitting courtside?
I would demand to.
Yeah, we're probably. I mean, 10K when you account for travel and.
Now, was it
seats
worth
and
it? In my humble opinion, no, probably not.
What is? I know we're just kind of gleaning comment section and my Twitter @ replies and yours, and the fans in the arena. I guess. Have we seen enough in the first 2 rounds here to not freak out and panic over losing game 1? Or is that Minnesota sports fan anxiety creeping in here after this game tonight? What's your general sense?
All joking aside, I think that there is now an understanding, especially after last round when they came back from the brink of elimination, the precipice. I don't think people are going to freak out. Plus, I think it's different, Phil, when you lose pretty decisively.
Yep.
And that Denver series, that whole thing, including from the Wolves end, was weird. I mean, 3 complete blowouts? No game, like Game 7 was a blowout in the first half for Denver, and then the Wolves came in and basically blew the Nuggets' drawers off in the second half.
Yeah.
I think tonight really set the tone for what we're going to see. I really do. I think it's going to be a hard series. I think it's going to be long. I think it's going to be close. I could see it going either way, but I don't know there's going to be the freak out unless the Wolves lose game 2. Now because that's, 2 games at home might cause some consternation, or almost certainly would. But I really think the tone was set tonight, and it's going to be, if you feel like you need the Wolves to win in 4 or need blowouts, you probably should discontinue your viewing of this series right now.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was not a pretty game to watch, but I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a major deviation from the Denver series. I feel completely at peace with this loss in terms of, I don't think this loss changes anything about my outlook on the series. I still think the Wolves win the series. I don't even think Game 2 is a must-win because the Mavericks aren't this, unbeatable force at home. The Mavericks lost, 16 home games in the regular season. I believe they've lost playoff home games too. So I think it'd be nice to get Game 2 here. Don't get me wrong. Falling into a 2-0 hole is not ideal. But, this is the roller coaster of the playoffs. As you found out in the Denver series, it ain't going to be smooth sailing, 16-0. You're playing some of the best offensive players in the world here, and maybe in some ways this was a good thing. All of the energy spent coming back from down 3 games to 2, the Game 6 emotions, and then being down 20 points, biggest comeback in NBA history in a Game 7 to knock off the defending champions, the 3-time MVP. I know you had an extra day off in between, but that is an emotional mountain to climb. And even before the game, we're down here, we're talking to Dane Moore, our buddy, Kyle Teige's in the house, and Jack Borman from Canis Hoopus, and we're all kind of kicking around, what's the feeling? And I think the overall, just talking to the different people who covered this team, nobody really knew what to expect in Game 1 because it was, again, 2 fighters feeling each other out for the first time. But also, nobody really knew what the Wolves' energy was going to be like, and I'm not excusing it. They came out flatter than you would have hoped. They didn't bring as much of a late game burst as you would have hoped. It felt like Ant was exhausted. But if you were to tell me, after scaling the mountain that was Denver in the second round, the Wolves are going to come out a little flat and they're going to lose to Luka and Kyrie in the first game, I'd say, that probably makes sense. That's within the realm of realistic things that could happen in Game 1, and it did.
And the Mavericks want to make you flat as well. Like that's the thing, is they're going to work their asses off just like the Wolves have to make you look flat. Their approach to Ant, let's talk about that. It was interesting, and I sort of appreciated it. But if Ant also gets really hot, it's going to backfire. Now, the question is, at what point does it backfire so bad that it costs the Mavs a game and the Wolves win? But, it was basically a 180 in approach when you look at how Denver tried to disarm him, and when you look at the fact that the Mavericks almost didn't try to disarm him. They almost encouraged him to shoot, and they almost encouraged him to just try to make plays. Now, I do think that he's going to have games where he goes off, but it's a very interesting philosophy, and I'll be curious to see if it gets tweaked or if this is going to be sort of their ride or die option of Ant's gonna get his. He's gonna do what he's going to do. We're not going to do what Denver did, which was try to stop him at all costs at times.
Yeah, I would say Chris Finch is gonna probably sleep about 3.5 hours over the next 2 days while you wait for game 2, just putting together a counterattack here. But the biggest thing that stood out to me, as we talked about like 30 minutes ago, is I don't know that shooting 49 threes is in the best interest of the Timberwolves and this offense. And I know that a lot of them were open looks, and that's great, but like Kyle Anderson was shooting threes tonight. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who hasn't made a 3 in a week, he probably should be taking 4 corner threes. So I'm not but should Ant be taking 12 threes out of 16 shot attempts? 75% of his shot attempts coming from 3?
No.
They got to find a way to unlock him either in the mid-range or somehow getting him to the rim. But, Dallas came in. I think they executed their game plan exactly how they wanted. Let's pack the paint. Let's make these guys launch a bunch more threes than they're comfortable with. And if Anthony Edwards, if he wants to launch 12 threes a game and they wind up winning 4 games with Anthony Edwards being a three-point shooter, so be it. We can live with that. So they got to find a way to unlock some things inside. No, it's funny because they actually did unlock some Rudy lobs inside, like the cat to Rudy stuff was on point tonight. But yeah, it'll be Chris Finch has been a master adjuster throughout the entire season. This team finds ways to come back at you and tweak rotations and counterpunch and raise their energy levels.
Yes. And
it'll be a really interesting 48 hours here now that they know what Dallas is bringing to the boxing match.
Yeah, and in fact, if I was to do a quick pie chart of optimism about Game 2 right now, the adjustments is a huge one. And look, I think the Mavericks also, because it's not like they played a perfect game, I think the Mavericks are going to counter as well, but I'm with you. I think Chris Finch is going to counter. You've got to find a way to get more from your stars. The rest of a day, it's not a lot, but it's going to help a little bit. And yeah, if you could get back, so you're right on the threes. You don't want to shoot 50 threes. That's very circa 2017. I also think if you could get back to a formula where you actually have Cat shooting more of the threes, and Ant, you know what Ant has to do starting in Game 2? He's got to sort of do what Kyrie did in the first half. He's just got to drive. He's got to get inside. Now, he doesn't have the same moves. He's a great player, but Kyrie is special too. But I feel like Ant has to get to the basket like Kyrie did. And look, what Kyrie did in the first 2 quarters was not easy. Like, you're going against some big guys there. That's not some type of let's exploit a weakness here. They found that. So, yeah, I think you're going to see adjustments. I also think you're going to see guys probably have better games. All due respect again, but when Slow-Mo is a star player, you're going to have a problem.
Dude, I keep going back to that, man. Slow-Mo and Jaden McDaniels combined for 35 points, most of them in the first half, and you lost.
Yeah.
So that's
but
a tough one to
thing's
swallow.
great. That's 2 really good games.
Yeah, he can do this, man. Like, he's not going to hit 6 threes every night, but he can get aggressive. And I've used the comparison to like a diet Kawhi Leonard. He's got that quiet demeanor, but he's a 3-level scorer who clamps down on defense. Similar sizes, right? Kind of lanky. So I don't think it should be an anomaly that he's an offensive contributor, and you have seen him assert himself more. By the way, just kind of going through some of the post-game quotes that are coming in here. Anthony Edwards at the podium said, "We were just a little tired, probably." Understandable to some extent. You just fought your ass off against Denver, and coming back home here, but if that's what the adjustment is, hey, we just need to like get a couple extra hours of sleep and shake off that crazy Denver series, and now we're locked back in. All right, well then the Wolves probably win this thing in 5 or 6. I see people are clowning me for saying the Wolves can still win this thing in 5 games. I mean, I think the Wolves are decidedly the better team on paper. Obviously, two of the greatest offensive players of this generation might have something to say about that, but I think I legitimately think that there's a chance the Wolves could roll off 4 straight wins or 4 out of the next 5 and win this game, win this series in 5 or 6. Call me a homer if you want to. But I told you guys what was going to happen after Game 5 against Denver, and y'all called me a homer too. So
yeah, we all did.
It's fine.
I see it going more 6 or 7, but I see here's what's interesting is the Mavericks have, as you pointed out on Flagrant this morning in ranking the 10 best players, the Mavericks have 2 phenomenal players. The Wolves have a deeper talent in their roster. But I really think, again, after tonight, these are 2 really evenly matched teams as far as philosophies go. So that's what I'm curious about. I love the fact that this is going to basically be 2 teams that are going to just grind their asses off. And there's going to be fans. I saw a comment when you were talking before about that this game was boring. Well, I don't think it's boring. I think it's interesting to watch, and I think it's fun. But I mean, but yes, if you want basketball where you're like, oh man, look at that play, this is not going to be the series. But I think what really intrigues me is that while there might be an overall talent gap, you're looking at a couple of clubs that are really, really team-oriented, which is weird in today's NBA. I don't feel like there's a ton of true teams necessarily across the board.
I got to refresh. I'll be right back.
Oh, you're refreshing.
Yeah, it's all my.
All right. Phil is taking a little break. So, again, the Wolves fall tonight in Game 1 to Dallas, going through your comments here. But to go back to my point, I didn't find this game boring. I found this game to be entertaining. And think of it like this. Think of this series as a soap opera, okay? So episode 1 or a drama, a streaming. It's a Turner streaming drama. Episode 1 set a tone, but like it's episode 1. You got to be patient here. You know, a lot of times you start to stream a show and you're like, I had to grind my way through the first 2 episodes. And then, oh, my God, episode 3 was unbelievable. And now I'm hooked, right? I think this series resembles that way more than this just high-flying, start-to-finish, great basketball. I think what we're going to see is sort of a rolling out of where this thing is going to go, and I think it will probably get progressively more entertaining as the familiarity and the animosity, which I'm looking forward to, grows.
I'll drop this bomb of a question on you 43 minutes in, and we'll wrap this here pretty soon. But again, I think they still win the series. Let's say they don't. Let's say what we saw tonight was just this Mavericks team is tough as nails. They kind of take on Jason Kidd's personality, scrappy defense. You know, they've got the size that makes the Wolves uncomfortable, and Kyrie and Luka, just one of the all-time great offensive pairings of the last 20, 25 years. And the Mavericks are just too much. Maybe the Mavericks they got 2 guys who are a little further along. Kyrie Irving is a former champion, right? And Anthony Edwards just wasn't quite ready to take it across the finish line. If the Wolves get beat in this series, how will you feel about the season?
I think we talked about this as far as like progressing in the playoffs back in like January or so. You're in the Western Conference Finals. It's a success. I said, I believe my statement at the time, and I will remain consistent, was I think they need to get through 2 rounds to be considered a success. They've done that now. And here's the thing I like about this team. I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. It would be different if they now sort of just collapsed, right? And then you're like, where did that resilient group that played great defense go? I don't see that. But I'm not sure what your response is, but I think if you make the Western Conference Finals, and you know what? to a partial degree, we are to the point in the playoffs where a team can run out of gas. We've seen it happen before.
Yeah, well, Conley's one to keep an eye on that point. You know, like we've seen Chris Paul at a similar age run out of gas once you get to late May, early June, and oh my God, the Suns are about to win it all, whatever. And all of a sudden, Gaslight comes on, and Chris Paul needs an off-season break.
Because guys like you and Dex never fill your damn tanks up before it's too late.
Well,
you always let it run down. This is why you should go Zulgad. You got to stop in at like a quarter of a tank left.
Don't talk to me. Talk to Mike Conley. It's his gas tank we're talking about.
Well, then the dude's got to go. You know what? He's got to go to Quick Trip.
Wow. Go to Quick Trip for all your chicken needs, all your
Great
gas
place.
needs.
Yep.
But okay. On the macro, it's already been a successful season because this team is in the Western Conference Finals for the first time in 20 years. It feels like the start of an era here that you've built it up the last 3 years. Anthony Edwards is 22. He's not even going to peak for like 3 or 4 more years. It feels like the start of something, even as you turn this thing over and like Rudy Gobert ages out and goes away, and you have to start bringing in some different pieces. The core group of Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels at some point I think is going to be a 17, 19 points per game guy at age 24, 25. I mean, you've got something here. So on the macro, it's already been a successful season. You knocked out the defending champions. But now that we know that happened, okay, if we're being plopped down right now and we have to say what would be a successful season now that you know what happened. You just beat the defending champs. You swept Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and the Phoenix Suns. It would be really disappointing if you didn't get to at least the NBA Finals as the better team in this conference finals. And then looking on the other side of the bracket, Boston, my God, like they're just giving these games away. How they pulled that one out the other night in Game 1 is insane. I mean, Boston's begging to get beat by either the Mavericks or the Wolves. And I mean, if the Pacers get through, I think either the Mavs or the Wolves would be the heavy favorite in that series. Yep. Not to disrespect them too much, but I just think yes, it's already a successful season, but here you are, and the path is clear. There's no dynasty. There's no 2016 Warriors waiting for you to pummel you in 5 games.
Right.
Go take it at this point.
There's a difference between disappointing and unsuccessful, I think. So, yes, you're right. The path is never going to be probably better than this. Your path is phenomenal. And the fact that you came back, if you had lost to Denver, it would have been, I would not have called the season a success, especially when you jumped off to a 2-0 lead on the road, okay? Mm-hmm. But I'd be hard-pressed now if they lose to the Mavericks to say the season was not a success. Disappointing because of the path? Absolutely. No question. So, I think there's a difference there because I'm with you. If you're a Wolves fan and you look at where this team is right now and sort of the roadmap, which is this Route 66 wide open, you can go – it's the Autobahn. You can drive 120 and nothing's going to stop you. So, yes, I would agree on disappointment, but I am to the point now where I do consider for a team that is on the upswing, it's a success to go farther than, again, any men's team that we care about really in this town has gone since 2004 when these guys, for the last time, made the conference finals.
Yeah. By the way, Rudy Gobert said, I have to do a better job on the rebounds. I can't let those guys just get offensive rebounds.
Yeah, he's correct.
I'll be better. Not a whole lot of revolutionary stuff coming out of the locker room right now. They just, I think the main themes are Anthony Edwards thinks that they were a little sluggish, a little tired. He looked gassed at the end of the game, chasing Kyrie around. And they were just kind of baited into taking way too many jump shots. I mean, the Mavericks... Yeah. The Mavericks did a better job of imposing what they wanted to happen in this game than the Timberwolves did. But we'll see what happens in Game 2.
It's a disappointing loss. It's a blown up opportunity. But the comments that you are reading from Finch and the players right now make sense because I don't think it's a loss to get super upset about.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like you had a chance. You very easily could have won, but also I don't think it's the type of thing where it's like, oh my God, this is it's game one. And look, we just saw this. These series, pendulum swings are constant. This thing could go 6 or 7 games. It could go either way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is game one. And, I mean, hell, look, the Timberwolves won the first 2 games in Denver and damn near lost the series because they came back. So I think it's the double R, resilience and rest. Resilience and rest are the most important things here because you do have to get some rest.
Yeah. Yep. So, all right. Well, I think that's a wrap here on this Game 1 recap podcast. Flagrant Howls on the Score North YouTube channel. For those of you who are maybe just discovering this podcast for the first time, you're looking for Wolves content during this playoff run, thank you. Please click the like button and the subscribe button on the Score North YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Those things help us continue to grow this thing. Kyle Tigey will be back in the mix tomorrow. We'll talk to Grady and Jim Pete again next week. If you haven't checked out Craig Kilborn on Flagrant House from a few days ago, he was excellent. And we'll be live, you and me, from Target Center for the home games after every game. And then from at least we're going to be watching the road games from home. Maybe we travel for the NBA Finals. We'll see if they get
Oh, really?
We'll see.
We'll see. Palatial estate. My palatial estate is very nice.
Well, we applied for our NBA. You had to apply for NBA Finals credentials by like tomorrow. So you and I, we got our NBA Finals credentials submitted. So we'll see.
I mean, this league.
We don't want those seats to be empty.
I'm big in this league. I'm not sure if you knew that or not.
Yeah,
Silver's a big fan of mine. I'm probably gonna go to a 5-star restaurant with Chuck and the guys.
I could see you roaming around
Little
Boston.
Parzana.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Boston. Great bars.
Yeah.
I can tell you about the bars.
Yeah, Boston. Okay. I'm not like a huge Boston fan, but if
Really?
it's for the LOB,
Great city, and you can go to Fenway. Hey, Maua.
kind of a dump, not gonna lie.
Oh, it's a historic dump. Babe Ruth played there.
I'd rather go to Wrigley if we're talking.
I love Wrigley
100-year-old
too.
Stadiums. Yeah.
I love Wrigley too. You know what I don't like? When my basketball arena leaks. That's what I don't like. This is not a great old arena.
No. So, all right, for the sports dad, Judd Zulgad, I am Phil Mackey. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Everyone, deep breath. It's early. It's the roller coaster of the NBA playoffs. If you survived the Denver Nuggets series, you can survive losing a game one to the Dallas Mavericks. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.